It's how you do it. It's not your outside, it's your inside. That's not how you appear. It's how you actually are. That's important. In the first one, everybody looked at the person who looked most like a leader. He was tall, he was strong, he was the oldest, he was the heir, and everybody just said, well, obviously. Even God's prophet said, well, obviously this is the one that he's going to choose. I mean, come on. And God took it down and showed people that it's not good enough for him to be strong and appearing like a good leader. He has to actually be a good leader. He has to have the heart of a leader. He has to have the heart of somebody who's going to be able to be used by God. And that's why he chose David. All of his older brothers, they looked the part, but they didn't act the part. David, he had the job that nobody wanted. He had to watch the sheep. He had to be smelly and stinky, and he was the one that got it. It didn't appear as though he was it, but he was. When we read through Mark, Jesus says the same exact thing in different words. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. And he said, the Pharisees, you're cleaning these cups out, you're cleaning these bowls out, and you're making sure everything's right, and the food is perfect, and all this is fine. You know, you're making sure all the instruments are good, and the things that you're putting into yourself are good, but then you're going out and you're saying everything that's coming out is bad. Everything that's coming out is rotten. And he's making an allusion to, you know, the food might look nice coming in. It might be in clean bowls, but at the end, we all know what happens. You know, food becomes unclean. And they became unclean in the Old Testament. And he's telling them, that's not the important part. It's your heart. It's what you're doing with that food. Why are you eating the food? Why are you doing these things for God? Why are you offering things to your parents? Why are you doing it? Recently, at Bible study, we went over Romans chapter 12. And we talked about Romans chapter 12 being one of the most miserable chapters for a Christian in the world. Because it's a chapter that tells us what's expected of us and compared to what we're really able to do. You know, and it makes us realize, oh, crud. And it makes us look at ourselves. This is all going back to something that I've been listening to, and there's another gentleman, preacher that I listen to every once in a while. But another example, I was with Mallory yesterday, and we were going for a walk, and the church bells started ringing, and it was a Catholic church right on the street, and everybody was walking from their house and driving from their house and going into Mass. You know, when we went, and everybody goes in, right at the bell. And when we were leaving, we came back around from where we were walking. It was over. As soon as those bells rang and it was over, everybody went out, everybody went home. We saw some people in other places, and their whole demeanor changed. And while they were going to church, they were doing a bunch of things that, you know, you wouldn't expect them to do in Mass, or you wouldn't expect to do on your way to Mass. And in terms of how they're driving and all kinds of stuff, and then coming out of Mass. The same thing. Go in, everything's great. You go out, everything goes bad. And it's an interesting thing. And we're looking at optical illusions in our bulletin. Why do straight lines look crooked sometimes, and why do crooked lines look straight? Our eyes play tricks on us. God also says our hearts play tricks on us. In Jeremiah, he says the heart is the most deceitful of all things. It leads people astray. Our emotions can become the most deceitful of all things. They can make us believe something that we don't believe. It can make us want something so much that we'll do anything to get it, even if we don't believe it. Our whole purpose in Christ is to talk about salvation. Christ offers salvation. It's a gift. And it's available to everybody. And we're supposed to give it out to everybody. Hand it out to everybody. Not look to the strong warrior types and say, yeah, this guy is one I want on my side in Christ. No, we want to get everybody on our side. We want to get the homeless man on our side who doesn't have a big car, anything like that. But, we get caught up in appearances. We get caught up in things. I was listening to a sermon. The gentleman's name is Paul Washer. I mentioned him before here. And he talked about one of the biggest things that he notices about the way we share salvation. And it comes back to relationships, and it comes back to friendships and investment. He's in the Baptist church. And one of the biggest things that the Baptist church has come up with in its past is, some of you might have said it too, the sinner's prayer. Does anybody know the sinner's prayer? Somebody says, if you just repeat after me, if you say this prayer, you'll be saved. You guys know it up there, right? Right. But they say, just say this, and then you'll be saved. Now, everybody knows what Islam does to convert people, right? Oh no, Islam scares people, Believe in Muhammad or get executed. Those are your choices, Accept him, extremists will say accept him or, we'll kill you. So, a lot of people will say Muhammad is God. Just so that they don't have to get killed. But they don't really mean it. They just don't want to die. And then a lot of people sometimes, maybe think they really are saved, Christians, we have something too that you used to hear about them, the sermons that always got preached. Blank and blank sermons. Who's going to come up with it? Fire and brimstone sermons. But basically, accept Jesus or die. Yeah. But die, burning and catching on flames and everything. And also, if you don't accept him, there's kind of no place for you in our church. Just go outside, maybe someday something will happen, but we're done, People want to continue living. Everybody wants this life to not stop. Nobody wants to die. So as soon as you throw death in there, people are going to do anything for the hope to avoid death. And sometimes when we throw around Christ's salvation so simply, we simplify Christ's salvation to, just confess with your mouth, and we say believe in your heart, but it doesn't really get emphasized. Paul Washer talks about the Baptist church, customarily, brings a bunch of people up to the front of the church, and they say, if you want to be saved, kneel down and say this prayer. And that's it. And then the people say it, and then they say, well, now you have salvation, and now you're in Christ, and now you won't die, now you can't lose it, and everything's good. And a lot of people do it because they're in fear or they're in bad situations. But he told a story about one gentleman who came up to the altar, and he said it, and everybody else got up that was there, and they left, and he stayed there, and he said, what are you doing? Why are you staying here? And he said, well, I said the prayer, but he goes, nothing's changed.